Before you watch this episode of our City Current radio show, I want to invite you to join City Current's e-learning and online personal development platform called Growth Current. I'm Jeremy Park, host of the City Current radio show and CEO of City Current. Growth Current is your exclusive ticket to attend virtual events with global thought leaders, national guest speakers, and experts who can help you grow personally and professionally. It gives you access to success secrets, lessons learned, learning modules, and so much more. Being online, you can join us from anywhere in the world. Subscriptions are only $8 a month, or you can do bulk subscriptions for your team. Check out growthcurrent.com to learn more and to join us in our efforts to power the good. And now, on to the show. Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be with our next guest, Ann Pitts. She is the director of Give901, so we get to dive into the world of education and making a difference. How are you doing, Ann?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. Thanks for having me today.
So let's start with a little bit of history and context for Give901. So give us a history lesson for Give901.
Sure, absolutely. So Give901 is a giving network that exists to address education inequities in Memphis. So we're pairing giving with volunteer opportunities to make real impacts in the lives of the kids here in Memphis, particularly those children from underserved and economically disadvantaged communities. And so really how this all got started is through city leadership and the executive director, John Carroll, who 10 plus years ago started working with a variety of organizations in town with the mission of recruiting, developing, and catalyzing leaders for the city of Memphis. Now, not everybody may be familiar with city leadership, but I bet a lot of people are familiar with Choose 901. And Choose 901, of course, was one of the first organizations that John Carroll began through city leadership to tackle one really specific problem, and that was the perception that people outside of Memphis had of Memphis. And so he really wanted to change that story. And so Choose 901 started to become that catalyst for helping to get the word out to surrounding communities and the nation overall about all of the amazing things in our city and how wonderful it is. And so through that process, he started having a lot of conversations with our business leaders here in Memphis and kind of discovering two really interesting and seemingly opposing viewpoints. And one is from the business leaders, they were telling him, hey, we don't have enough talent in this city, to either move our business to Memphis or to stay in Memphis. We need more talent. And then working with a lot of young people, he was hearing from them, hey, there are not enough jobs in Memphis, so I'm going to move to Nashville or someplace else. And so he really sat down to kind of start thinking through, what's going on here and how can we tackle this problem? And Choose 901 actually started connecting these two groups of people, the ones that couldn't find a job with the ones that couldn't find employees. And so basically Choose 901 was serving as the professional network for kids who didn't have one. And it really started to work, to really be effective. So we're connecting kids from Soulsville with FedEx and from Fraser with St. Jude and getting them into internships and entry-level jobs. And the hiring managers and CEOs were really loving the work that we were doing. And they were saying, hey, how do we keep this going? And so we started to take a look at the schools and programs that were shaping these incredible kids and, looking at what the pipeline was. And so we wanted to answer that big question. How do we give all Memphians a great education and then keep them here in Memphis so that they become the next generation of an educated workforce to really build up our business community as well? Yeah. So when people started to ask how to invest in these students and this educational pipeline, Give901 was born.
Carry that forward into kind of what your calendar looks like, so to speak, in terms of how you kind of pull these pieces together. Because as you mentioned, you're working with the businesses, you're working with other nonprofits, and you're also working within the education system. So you've got a lot of kind of pieces to the puzzle. So talk about pulling all these pieces together to ultimately create the puzzle.
Yeah, it's a really interesting strategy. So we have created a network of 10 nonprofits here in Memphis, and these 10 nonprofits have been evaluated for their effectiveness, their efficiency, their measurable outcomes, and they are improving access to high quality education and college readiness, which is really essential, through teacher recruitment and teacher training and retention, innovative school programs, and after school academic support and mentoring. So we really focus our energy on these 10 nonprofits specifically, and then the students and the communities that they serve. The vast majority of the students served by these 10 nonprofits are among our city's poorest children, and predominantly minority students. So we work very closely with them, and we have created this giving network. So throughout the year, we are raising money to help support these programs and help support these kids. What's really fantastic about these programs is they are concentrating on educating the kids, helping them find mentors, and helping them get to that one important date on the calendar, and that's high school graduation, but then also helping them get into college, find those internships, find those jobs. And that's where we continue our work with those students, helping to connect them with the business community. So we really work hand in hand with these education nonprofits and then with the businesses to connect them throughout the year. But most importantly, once we get these kids to graduation and helping them, find jobs and want to stay here in Memphis.
You've been active during the pandemic. Talk about the learning kits and some of the pivots on your end with the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, back in March, school came to, in-person school came to a halt. And so kids were going home and switching over to virtual learning. And then, of course, carried through with that in the fall. Well, that's been a real big challenge for kids across the board. It's a challenge for everyone, parents, kids, across the board. But it is a particular challenge for the kids that we are serving. I mean, when you think about it, here in Memphis, we have over 40% of our children live in poverty. And think about what that means when they go home to their neighborhoods, when they go home to their communities. Many of them are living through all of the systemic challenges of poverty, which includes instability in their housing. And so when they don't necessarily have a permanent place to live, or they are living in a family that's having to juggle a lot of different challenges, or they don't have access to the internet, or they don't have access to a computer at home, or multiple people in the household have to share the computer, it can be an insurmountable challenge. And so we started working with our nonprofit partners to kind of address those issues to make sure kids did not fall behind, particularly our most vulnerable. And so we raised money, we got books, we got school supplies, we got learning activities, we got science kits, STEM kits, and we created these learning packets. And we distributed them to over 3,000 kids across the city, particularly in the poorest zip codes of Memphis. And just a great opportunity for them to keep up with their reading skills, to keep up with their love of learning and their curiosity, to make sure that they were able to continue to meet those educational milestones.
What's something, when you look at the pandemic on your end and still being able to support the work that needs to be done, the students, what's something you think, hey, we've learned this along the way that ultimately is going to help us become stronger coming out of the pandemic?
Oh goodness, so many things, really. I mean, one of the things that we have learned is that our nonprofits that we work with are so intimately tied to their families, their students, and their communities that they have been able to react very quickly to all of the many changes that have happened since March. And that's really important because it's more than just sending out an email to the parents, because they may not always get that. They know the parents, they know the families, they stay in constant touch. And many of our programs have also instituted counselors into their after school programs and their school programs so that they can get access to mental health care to a lot of these kids, because you've got incredible challenges already, and then you throw a pandemic on top of that, and and that can cause a lot of difficulties for children. So it's just been incredible to see the great reactiveness that these programs have to make sure that education and the momentum continues.
So how can we help? Talk about the ways that the community can partner with you and Give 901 to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we have created this network of 10 nonprofits, and we've evaluated them for their effectiveness and the measurable outcomes. And what we now ask the public to do is to support Give 901 so that we can help these organizations continue the exceptional work that they're doing for these kids while they're in school. And then also once they come out of school and become, many of them, first generation college students, and then getting them back into the Memphis workforce. So you can go to our website, give901.org, learn more about the organizations that we support and the ways in which they are impacting children's lives in Memphis. And we have an individual giving program that's actually going to launch in 2021. So individuals in the community will be able to give and to support Give 901. But we also have a really robust workplace giving program where employees across the city can all work together to give even just a small amount, give the equivalent of 1 hour of pay per month. And when we add all of that up, it makes a huge impact on education for these kids. So talk to your employer, see if they're part of the program or interested in getting to be a part of the program, and reach out to Give 901 to take part in it.
Talk about the ripple effect in terms of the larger benefit for the community, because I think it's important for context to understand the work that you're doing with those nonprofits, with those students, but ultimately, this is the future generation of our workforce, our leaders. They're going to be the husbands and wives and mothers and fathers. And by pouring in and supporting the work that you are doing, the nonprofits are doing, the students, the schools, it's going to create a larger ripple effect that ultimately is going to benefit everyone in our community.
Absolutely. Well, as we know, I mean, Memphis is an amazing city. It has so many things to offer people, to offer families growing up here. But we also have real issues with poverty. We have a very high poverty rate, and the kids are the biggest victims of that poverty, with over 40% of kids in Memphis living in poverty. That puts them at a real disparity. And there are many, many achievement disparities across the socioeconomic levels. So we want to eliminate that as much as we possibly can. And this affects the livability of our city. It affects the viability of businesses in our city that want to grow here, that want to stay here, and need an educated workforce in order to do that. And so that's where the impact really happens. With every child that graduates from high school, with every child that goes on and gets a college degree, with every child that we pull out of poverty, that's another family that will not have to live in poverty. That's another family that will continue to climb the socioeconomic ladder and not have children that are born into that systemic poverty. So that's our ultimate goal, and that's how we affect generations. And we really believe at Give901 that we can change this. We can attack our city's poverty, especially childhood poverty, through education.
Yeah. What's one thing that you wish everyone knew about Give901 that they might not know?
Oh gosh, there's so many things, but I would say the main thing is that we have this really vibrant workplace giving program. That's something that not a lot of people are familiar with. And it really is a very essential way to affect amazing change across the city, because one person can give a certain amount and that's wonderful. But when you take that and you put it in a bucket with hundreds and hundreds of other people across the city, and you get those businesses and those employees involved also in the volunteer component of what we do, in the mentoring component of what we do, you can change children's lives.
We'll wrap up and tell them one more time the website and where to go to get involved.
Absolutely. Go to give901.org. We have links to all of the organizations that we serve there, so you can learn more about what they do in their programs, and you can learn how to get involved with Give901.
Well, Ann, thank you for all you do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy.